Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at a couple of books from the Ashes set. This is the Greyhawk 2nd edition one. This is the one that follows up the Greyhawk Wars box set. We're going to take a look at the two books that came in this. I looked at the contents of the box a few weeks ago. Today we're going to take a look at what's inside the books. The Atlas of the Flanaess. This would be the post-war Flanaess. And then, of course, the campaign book. So there's a lot of ideas in here, a lot of nuggets. These books are outstanding. They've been important to my campaign for a long time because I did my own version of the Greyhawk Wars based on the Gore the Rogue novels. I did them long before the Greyhawk Wars was published, but I was able to use a lot of material out of this for my post-war Greyhawk. So we're going to take a look at the contents in here and see what the goodies are today on page 121. The Atlas of the Flanaess. This came out in 1992, the box set, and it was a follow-up, as I said, to the 1991 Greyhawk Wars. And this is the post-war world. Here's our nice little post-war map, the post-war version of the Darlene map, showing how things have changed, and this book goes into detail. This is written by the excellent Carl Sargent. Carl is no longer with us, unfortunately, but he was a prolific and easy-to-read writer for Greyhawk in the early 90s. And then we take a look at second edition. This was a transitional book for first to second. Second edition had been around for 2 or 3 years by this point, but it was still trying to kind of push first edition out of the way. And one of the ways they hoped to do it was by introducing Greyhawk and having everybody say, well, if Greyhawk is there, it must be like first edition. Personally, I grab everything Greyhawk, including third edition, and I just use what I like and throw away what I don't like, just as I've always done. I liked this book a great deal, and I found a lot of useful stuff out of it. So here we go into the high history of the Flanaess, the early history of the Flanaess, how it was settled by the Iridians and the Flan, and talks about the invoked devastation that was dropped on the Bacluni, and then the Bacluni dropped the Rain of Colorless Fire on the Sul and caused the Great Migrations. And we got a lot of nice history on it. The Great Kingdom, as it's basically its rise and fall. The rise of Ayus, where Ayus came from, and then the war beckons. Avid V was sitting on the Malachite throne, and he's basically one of the movers of the Greyhawk Wars. And then the Greyhawk Wars itself goes into what the box set did to us, rather. And then the Great Kingdom awakens, and then the final act, which was what's going on with the West. Turash Mac takes over the Pomarge. Turash Mac would later be revealed, spoiler alert, would later be revealed to be some kind of orc vampire. I don't remember off the top of my head if he was converted after he had become their warlord or before. Frankly, I never liked Turash Mac. He met a sudden and definite end in my campaign very early. I didn't like an organized orc kingdom on Greyhawk's doorstep. So there we have the death of the Great Kingdom, and then those who watch, the Scarlet Brotherhood. According to Greyhawk Wars, and in here, the Scarlet Brotherhood, well, they were everywhere. They had spies in every king's court, in every important household in the Flanaess, and then they all struck at once, and they overthrew kingdoms. I didn't do that. I always thought that would be beyond the power of any one power group to do. I also didn't like the complexion it gave Greyhawk, so I ignored that. The Scarlet Brotherhood were players in it, but only more regional than throughout the entire Flanaess. That was just my campaign. And then we get to the Encyclopedic, the peoples of the lands. So it goes through and gives us who lives where, the Baclunish, the Flanae, the Iridians. Gives us physical descriptions of them, the Sulois. And then we get to demi-humans, halflings, gnomes, dwarves, elves. And then the humanoids. So basically everybody else. And then we get the languages of the Flanaess. This was pretty nice. I liked it. For a while, I had different areas speaking Flan or Baclunish, and I still do that periodically when they go far afield, but in the main part of Greyhawk, where most of my campaign is run, everybody just speaks common. It's fun for role-playing. Unfortunately, I don't have as much time at my table with my players as I used to, so I can't indulge in tiny little minutiae like that without it eating up a significant portion of the game time. And also my players are veterans, and they've been through that with me. It's not something they want to spend their time on. So good or bad, that's how it is. And then we get greetings and farewells for different regions, forms of proper address, symbols and glyphs of the Flanaess, money in the Flanaess. This can actually play a lot of fun when you move around the Flanaess a lot. Is your money any good? Trade in the Flanaess, different symbols used in the Flanaess. I like that. The dark times. Oh, evil is all around us and no one's going to live. I didn't like that grim, dark take on Greyhawk. Greyhawk's always been grim enough for my taste. Thank you. I find, medieval France and England to be grim enough without adding more grimness to it. So I don't really. Let's face it, the Flanaess is based on medieval France and Europe and England. So I didn't make it much darker. And then the Law of Lands, Time to Adventure. Has peace really broken out, or is there still a lot of stuff going on? So the idea was to give a new breath into the Flanaess and give your players an opportunity to be more important cogs in the wheel. My players always kind of have been important cogs in the wheel, so that wasn't really much of a stretch for me, but I did use a lot of the background of this. So then we got to look at each of the kingdoms. So Alyssa, see the Great Kingdom. Elmore, see the Great Kingdom. Then we got to look at the Bandit Kingdoms, which did not fare well under Ayus in this book, and they did better in my universe. I kind of left them alone. The March of Bissell, Blackmoor, and so on. We got to look at all of them. Selene is very interesting. I wish there would have been more on Selene, because Yolande, the Queen of Selene, is very isolationist, and that's generated a lot of good role playing at my table. And I wish there was more than just a couple of paragraphs on it. Kingdom of Furiandi, which has a big thing to do in my Greyhawk. And the Great Kingdom, very important. And then the Free City of Greyhawk is under the Free Regions. That's another important part of my my world of Greyhawk. High Folk also plays an important role. The Horn Society, they get wiped out in the Greyhawk Wars. Not so in my world. The Horn Society is still very much there. I had done a lot with the Horn Society coming into the Greyhawk Wars so in the 80s, and I sure wasn't going to wipe that away because the book said I had to. We got a good look at the lands of Ayus, Keeland, and so on. I'm not going to name each and every city or country. Simply going to look at some of the high notes. So this gives you a ton of stuff to pull out and say, oh, I'll do an adventure with this. The County of Sundi. Let's take a look at what happened in Sundi. This was actually where I got my idea to do my campaign for the County of Sundi. And that campaign has since been revived. My players wanted to go back to Sundi and play those characters again. So we've kind of started a new page of that. Everyone's around 8th to 10th level now. And we're starting up another Sundi campaign that started about 2 weeks ago. And will continue. And the various Ulick, the county, duchy, and principality, and so on. Then we get to the free regions. We're coming up there. They've got free regions, the City of Divers, this Free City of Greyhawk, because so much is given out in the City of Greyhawk box set that they want you to buy, by the way. They don't give much information here. High Folk is a town that's been very important to mine because it borders on Furiandi. It's an elven city and has always played a key role in my Greyhawk campaign. And then we continue on through into the Wild Coast. Now we go to the Wild regions. Regions that were settled before, more or less, are not settled in the post-war Flanaess. So lots of adventuring opportunities. This whole book, this whole box set was about adventuring opportunities. Again, in the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of companies felt the need to blow up worlds or blow up their existing thing and create it new again for a new generation. I unfortunately lived through a lot of that. And not all of it was good. In fact, most of it really wasn't. Just blowing something up to blow it up isn't productive in my opinion. And this, I think, was a reaction, a delayed reaction to the departure of Gary Gygax and a way to put their own stamp, TSR to put its own stamp on Greyhawk without Gary Gygax. And actually, they chose, Carl Sargent, they chose a good writer to follow up what Gygax had done. And it definitely has its own flavor. There's not a lot Gygaxian in here. So now we get some neat little places of mystery. And these are pretty cool. I've used the Fading Lands before. I had something very similar in my earliest campaign. And I just, when I came over to Greyhawk in January of 82, I go ahead and I just made them the Fading Lands. That worked out pretty well. There's some really good adventure stories in here for the places of mystery. A lot of pages, about 8 pages on those. And then Tales of the Year of Peace. Oh, the Year of Peace. So things are becoming better now that evil has been routed. And however you wanted to run your Greyhawk, you really could out of this. If you wanted all the big powers exhausted and just kind of lying in wait for their next turn, that was one way you could run it. If you wanted to run a game where your players were more important, this was an opportunity. We got a nice look, although brief, of all the various Greyhawk deities in here. I like that. It's nice to have these in one book. I don't have to go out and pull out other books if I need to reference something on Ilona or Flargan. So this is pretty neat. And then Thurisdan, the Dark God, who is not called out in the various Greyhawk Dragon articles, is brought out here. And Thurisdan, of course, is the main driver in the Gore the Rogue books. The main driver, really. And that's it for this book. Now we're going to take a look at the campaign book. And the campaign book is very similar. It's just ways you can now use this area. The new Greyhawk, the free city. So what has changed? What is the same? What do you want to make your world? So we got economics in the free city. This deals mostly with Greyhawk and its surrounding areas. Greyhawk, during the Greyhawk Wars, although the city itself didn't really participate, it did use the opportunity to make a pretty big land grab to expand its domain. And as a DM, I had done this already, so this just dovetailed nicely. And just instead of having to find my old notes on it, I was just able to use this. This is very similar to a lot I had done already. And then the characters of the free city, and if they're already brought out in another book, folks using factions from the Greyhawk City box set, they're not going to be reiterated here. So different power groups. And we get an overview of what it is to be in the city of Greyhawk and its surrounding areas. And this is really about the Greyhawk lands only. This doesn't go into a ton beyond that. The city of Hardby has come under the rulership of the city of Greyhawk and how they're dealing with it. And just kind of neat. Again, I'm not going to stop and look at each and everything. But this book, in a lot of ways, I found more useful than this. But then my game has always been based around Firiandi and the city of Greyhawk. So I found a lot in this that I was able to pull and use for my Greyhawk campaign. So these are both really good books. Again, I'm not going to linger in these. I recommend this set unreservedly. I thought this actually breathed new life into Greyhawk, and then there were follow-up modules set in Greyhawk that came out right around, right this time and a little bit after, as they tried to revive Greyhawk in the 90s. And then, of course, we saw that Greyhawk come again in the 90s when they were going to the 25th anniversary stuff toward the late 90s to getting into about 2000. We saw a lot of the Greyhawk stuff revived there as well. So the 90s were not a bad time for being a Greyhawk fan. And then, of course, in 2000, we started up 3rd edition. Greyhawk became the core world, the basic world of 3rd edition. If it wasn't set in another world, it was by default in Greyhawk. So there's a lot of Greyhawk information to be had in 3rd edition. And yes, I have a ton of 3rd edition books because I have mined it for Greyhawk stuff. So we get a look at, some Orc Raiders, all kinds of stuff, Whispers and Tales and Whispers. So these are little adventure hooks you can use. That's really what this book is about. Heroes and villains, different factions and groups. It's good. I like make my own bad guys usually. But I don't know. There's some good stuff in here. The Scarlet Brotherhood in the City of Greyhawk, as I already said, I way downsized the Scarlet Brotherhood's importance in the City of Greyhawk and in the Flanaess as a whole. Melf, Prince Brightflame. I like Melf. It's good NPC to be running around your Greyhawk. And then adventures and mercenaries, so different mercenary companies that are out there, adventuring companies that are out there. This is pretty neat. I've actually used a few of these in my games. A lot of good information in here, even if I didn't take something directly out of here. I co-opted a lot of it into my game, just because a good idea is a good idea. I really don't care where I find it. A little bit on Fildor, the Blue Wizard. I may do a video on old Fildor. He's a lesser known thing in the world of Greyhawk. And come on, there we go. Little humid in here today. Pages stick together. Into the Mist Marshes is a nice adventure for right around the city of Greyhawk. And then the Sin Eater, another adventure. And we're out. Sorry, sticky pages, humid day. There we go. And now we're out. Okay, so for $20, which is what I spent for this originally, it was absolutely worth it. I think it does go for about $20 on DriveThruRPG right now. I recommend it if you're at all serious about Greyhawk. Yeah, it's not Gygax's Greyhawk, and I find it very useful, and I've used it for years. So I recommend it. Anything Greyhawk is going to make the okay list for me, except maybe for Puppets. That was a bad module. But other than that, that's it for today on page 121. That's all I've got. If you haven't subscribed, please do. If anybody's on the fence that you know haven't subscribed, why not? I also have a Patreon. Please take a look at that. So thanks for your time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on page 121.